Randolph Zaini, people. Randolph Zaini. Wayne has said that he'd like to do a little bit of an intro, so please.
Yeah, I want to say a few words about the prize and a little bit about Preman as a kind of a, not an institution, but what role Preman is in Indonesian society. Well, the prize was developed because of a meeting that I had with the woman that runs the Bali International Film Festival. And this is an American woman who lives in Bali who had a film production company and then started an international film festival to feature not just Indonesian filmmakers, but filmmakers in the region. And there was a large expat community in Bali. And so there's lots of different activities, not just for that community, but the community of Indonesians at large. And I thought, since I knew Lloyd from college, that maybe we could get an exchange going. And this is the second year, so some of you have seen previous films, the previous film from last year. And I look forward to meeting with the director of Pasam, who I haven't met yet, but we'll talk about your visit to Bali. Preman, as you see, are gangsters. We'll obviously hear a lot more about them, but for those of you maybe unfamiliar with Indonesia and other non-Western societies, this is not just an Indonesian an institution or role. Preman or other names similar to Preman were groups active even in colonial times as an intermediary between those that are ruled and those that are governed, often doing dirty business for the security forces during the colonial period and then thereafter. But there are Preman that are not just violent gangsters. There are Preman that, for instance, control the parking areas in many parts of Indonesia, downtown areas, or they help facilitate traffic. They help cars get through traffic. So that they find their way sometimes to be helpful and obviously not so helpful. But I thought I would just mention that as we go into the discussion that it's a very complex role in Indonesian society today. I was just in Indonesia for 2 weeks, and one of the major news stories was a scandal within the police department of Indonesia. Indonesia has a national police force, and this has led to, this scandal is opening up, I think, more commentary about things that maybe Indonesians would like to see changed, reform. And so that was so watching this movie and having heard from all my Indonesian friends when I was there 2 weeks ago, how interesting this scandal was, and that maybe 20 years ago a scandal like this would not have been uncovered. So they were looking at the scandal from a positive point of view also. So that was something that I think I noticed about this film that perhaps I should relate to you, is that this group, the Preman, they still exist in Indonesia, and it's very complicated. The country is a democratic country with a democratic government trying to reform itself, and it's going to take a lot of time for some of the things that are uncovered in this film to work themselves out. There's all kinds of social problems that led to the people that we call Preman. So anyway, that's enough. I'll just say, I look forward to any questions, and we also have representatives of Indonesia here, the government of Indonesia who can articulate it probably better than I can. So, well, I'll give it back to you now.
So, yeah, just hold on to the mic, it's good. Could you, Randolph, this is very accomplished. So can you tell us about your time at USC and all of the USC collaborators on this film? When were you at USC? Because this is a leading question. Tell us about your time at USC, when you graduated, and you were in the film school. What did you come out of there with in terms of sort of inspiration to make a film like this?
Ooh, I don't know where to start. When I came to USC, I felt very underprepared compared to my classmates. But along the time when I was doing my grad studies there, I made lifelong friends and lifelong collaborators. So when we were in class, in school, we would promise each other to help out when we graduate, because otherwise we will still always be outsiders. However, after graduating USC, finding a job and start getting a project started, especially in the US, it's very, very expensive. It's too hard to do sometimes. So I went back home, tried to get some funding, and this is actually an ultra low budget film.
And you want to share with us what it did cost? You want to share with us?
It's I think it's somewhere around 300,000. It's cheaper than some of the USC short films that was produced during the semesters.
Okay, well that's extraordinary in and of itself. Keep going, keep going.
But see, the thing is why we were able to accomplish this film is because we had a common pain and history about bullying, toxic masculinity, homophobia, and misogyny that everyone from the cast and crew, they wanted to express. So a lot of the people involved in the team, they were working for less than student project fees because they wanted to realize it. Everybody had an input about how scenes are portrayed, how characters should develop. So we still maintain the sincerity that it becomes a true collaboration. And that's why in any of the promotional material that we have, you will never see the tagline of film by Randolph Zaini, because it's not my film anymore. Everybody contributed way too much into this.
So it was a true collective effort.
It's true collective effort, yes.
So I asked you about SC because there are shades of your influences. I just want to explore this. Bruce Lee is in this film. Sergio Leone is in this film. The flashback sequences are very popular and were very good. And you managed to cast somebody as Ramon who looked like Adam Driver. So I just want to know, true or false? I mean, because it felt like your time at SC and sort of maybe absorption of some styles of American filmmaking make its way into this picture. So I'm curious if you could reflect on that. And if I'm completely wrong, just tell me to go away.
You are absolutely right. Because I spent half my life in Indonesia before I spent half my life in the US. And feeling that, that duality or identity crisis, whatever you call it, I draw a lot of inspiration from both. This is a love letter to my time growing up in Indonesia for the first half of my life, but at the same time learning the film language and everything else, and art and literature. I received all of that in the States. And yes, the intention was to make a film that is sincerely Indonesian, but it's not too dense ethically that it becomes, it creates a cultural barrier for anybody around the world to enjoy, to understand, to digest. So we were still maintaining the universal themes that is relatable for everybody.
Mm-hmm. So at $300,000 and staging fight scenes like that, large cast, did you feel that any of that was a strain on your budget, or you had a sort of a fairly stylized way to shoot those, and so it was efficient, economical, that kind of thing? Those are fairly large. They could eat up, a budget. So
yeah, we did everything practical for all the fight scenes, and in order to achieve those, I had to choreograph the fight scenes myself.
Yes.
And before anybody ever gets slammed on the floor or whatever, I was the first one to get hit. I'm the guinea pig. I'm the dummy, the training dummy for all of this.
I won't ask you how that felt. I think we can imagine. But okay, so let's talk about the cast that you put together, the lead cast. What were the auditions like? Did you know any of these folks? Is there a sort of indigenous filmmaking community from which you could easily draw?
Some of the folks I knew, they were friends, and they were the people that helped me when I was making short film with no pay. I couldn't pay anybody. So the lead actor, Kipa Iska, who played Sandy, the deaf Preman, he helped me out one day to make a short film, and I made a promise to him. I said, like, if my dream ever come true, I'm making a feature, I'll write the lead character based on you. And then 3 years later, I came back with the script for him. And yeah, it's this system of gratitude and gratefulness for everybody to help out. Paul Agusta, the dancing guy, he was my friend. He was the casting director, and because he's also an acting teacher, he knew a lot of the actors. So.
That's very helpful. Well, I feel like it's a very polished first film. I would like to ask about the script and sort of the arc of developing the script, whether your original vision for this film is what we see, or that the script changed over time, either because you couldn't realize every aspect that you wanted, or because you just had, in your own mind, things developed, a bigger story. Or are we seeing pretty much what was originally there?
What you see plot-wise, and it is like a very straightforward plot. Everything stayed the same, the sequences stayed the same. However, the dialogues and the portrayal of the characters, those were the one that underwent significant changes. Because the way I collaborated with my actors is we have this synchronization process about, I pour a lot of myself into each of the characters. The villains, the antagonists, the protagonists, the supporting characters. And then when I was meeting the actor, I asked them about how they relate, their past experiences that we can incorporate into the dialogue and how they bring themselves about. So during those one-on-one process, there's a lot, it was a little bit like therapy. We were sharing each other's trauma, and they were telling me things that I could never say, about them, like people coming out of the closet, people going to jail, people becoming victim to Premanism, people getting involved with murder, jail time, and all of that. At the end of the day, it boils down to one thing: it's abuse of power over others, or bullying, right? Toxic masculinity. And this is something that I realized as when I was writing the script. I was inspired to write it because our family were victimized by some Premans too, and out of that trauma, we got out okay. But at the same time, our family got together even closer. Now, during that time, what I realized was this cycle of bullying. It can happen everywhere, not only in politics or business or government or the society, community. It starts at school with family too. And that's why you see the movie starting at school and ending at school, because the boys that got caught in this vicious cycle, they never grow out of their mental age of being young boys who were impressionable, and whatever they do that becomes bad, oftentimes it's because they're the product of the society.
One of the things that I remember is about in 1996 or 1997, the organization I worked for, the American Indonesian Chamber of Commerce, we sponsored an essay contest to take American high school kids and teachers to Indonesia. So we were there for 2 weeks, and we met a lot of high school teachers. And there was one meeting where the American teachers sat with their Indonesian counterparts in Jakarta. This is 1996. And they were talking about what are some of their common problems. And they were saying in 1996 that the Indonesian teachers were having to cope for the first time with serious bullying in schools. And they hadn't really seen it up until that point. And so they were asking their American counterparts, well, what do you do? Because we haven't seen this problem. But, you know, it's there. And it came through my mind when I was watching this film, you know, that societies get more complicated, quote unquote modernization, whatever you want to say it. Problems in one part of the world are now no longer so unique to that area. And when I lived in Indonesia, you would not have heard, you know, in the 1970s of bullying. I think it was not there.
Let's go to the audience who has questions for Ray. Yes, go ahead.
I had a question specifically about the sound design. First, a comment. I love all the sound effects around Mr. Nanong, whatever his name was. Hanom, yeah. The sound effects around him were just incredible. Every time he moved in his chair, it was like a bull moving through the The other thing I wanted to ask about was that I found the sound effects to be very forward, like front and center. In almost all of the scenes, the sound effects were the first thing I noticed. And I was curious, was that intentional in a film about a deaf man to have the environmental sound effects be so strong, or was that just kind of a side effect? Or
Thank you for that comment, because I worked in sound for about 5-6 years. I did pre-recording mix, so it meant a lot when it comes to sound design. However, this screener that you are seeing, it's actually stereo. We have a DCP that has 5.1 where it can be quite deafening. Yeah, no pun intended, but yeah, it's not supposed to be front and center. It's right now what you're hearing is a stereo mix.
okay.
But regarding your comment about the sound effects, I'm happy to see that you notice that we put a lot of animal sweetener. For the Hanom character, he's a tiger. Because making a movie about bullying, I draw a lot of comparison with the animal kingdom. So each of the lead key characters, they have animals attached to them, like Sandy, the monkey face, an omnivore. And his best friend and his son is the blue bunny, the herbivore, without defense mechanism. The Premans are orange foxes with, the predator or the carnivore who hunt in packs. Ramon is a carnivore who hunts alone. He's a snake, and we underlay everything, all of those animals out every time this character comes out.
Wow.
Who else has a question?
Very operatic.
Go ahead,
First of all, just an overwhelmingly impactful film. Congratulations. So, I'm a pediatrician. I wondered how you thought about the placement of the child throughout the film and what he was exposed to and what that was supposed to represent.
You mean exposed to his environment?
The son, being exposed to all the violence, and how you thought about to what extent you thought about what that was meant to convey about his, involvement in all the violence, both as a witness and as a participant.
Right. I feel like I believe it's just the reality that us growing up, we were exposed to a lot of violence, real and otherwise, but mostly real. The actor portraying the son, Muzaki Ramdan, he is no stranger to violence. He was actually so severely bullied at school, violently bullied, that he actually had to start homeschooling. And that's what he brought into the role, playing this character. And some of the line, that last line, and when he said, that I know that you love me, but it's okay, you can sleep now. that was 100% him. I wrote something else, but at the moment I asked him, like, okay, this is, you know, you have a complicated relationship with your dad, you have this, you know, a strain, you know, like distant with him, and he misses him dearly. You know, it's painful that he misses him so. And that what you heard was, you know, it's something that came directly from his heart. And him being exposed to violence, this is nothing new. Like me personally, back in 1998 when I was 12 years old, my family had to run away from this riot that actually became a little genocide or pogrom. And that was the first time I saw dead bodies, you know, when we had to go into hiding. And that's something that left a very, very deep impression in me. And it's something that I struggled growing up and having to come to terms with. So, sorry.
We're going to have to wrap up fairly soon, and I just want to ask you though about distribution of this film. What does that look like in Indonesia? Do you have, because you were here in the States for such a long time, are you seeking sort of domestic distribution here in the U.S., global? What does it look like?
We were trying to distribute this movie in Indonesia for almost 2 years. We were trying to distribute it in theaters. However, the theater chains didn't want to screen this film I'm not sure what the reasons are, but one of the studios told me it's because the lead actor doesn't have enough Instagram followers. So, you know. But we actually got distribution in North America before we got distribution in Indonesia, and we couldn't go to the theater in Indonesia, but it's going to be distributed through Amazon Prime. But in the U.S., thank you.
That's great. Great.
In the U.S., it's coming out on Blu-ray and DVD next month, distributed by Wellgo USA, and they are trying to get it into streaming platforms as well.
Congratulations. Great work. It's really good.
Fantastic. I think the other reasons are that it does challenge people in power. I'll just say that.
Well, thank you all for coming out. We have time for one quick question. Go ahead.
And it's related to your comments, and it's what I was thinking when you were talking. And thank you for such a wonderful film. You have an amazing career ahead of you, I'm sure. I was wondering, the choice of having the lead character be deaf, is this representing what you feel is the death that's going on in what's happening, which is parallel with your question? Was that a deliberate choice?
Yes, it is a deliberate choice. You're absolutely right. And him being deaf represents a few layers of what is going on. It's us being passive and deaf of other people in it, or bullying that happens around us, all this violence that are happening around us. And also, deaf people are severely marginalized in Indonesia. Their preferred sign language is not approved by the country. Instead, the one that is being used is something that was developed by non-deaf people. And that's something that is still a struggle right now. My character, the lead character, he speaks Bisindo, that's the sign language. But the one that is approved in the educational program is called Sidi, and it's very unnatural for a lot of the deaf community to use it. And also, being deaf, I like to have the lead character to be defined more by what he does rather than what he says. And as you see, like every one of the character, they have two layers. They are wearing a mask. They're boys, they're little children wearing a mask of masculinity of some sort. And that's why some of the roles that you see, they don't even have names. The commandant, the guru, the haji. It's because a lot of these people, a lot of us, we hide behind those masks of roles and professions. And what they say and what they do is often contrary to each other, as is Asandi being deaf too.
Thank you so much.
Thank you.
Could we give Randolph Zaini a nice round of applause?